So today's the day we're gonna start on this interior. We've got 3/4 plywood we gotta run first. And I think you guys, if you followed some of my previous series where we've done the plywood, it's super important that the first sheets that you put up, and we always start in a back corner, and that's so where we have to push the corner piece into the other corner piece that's coming this way. Like, we'll start back here on this back wall, but then we'll run the side wall into the back. And we do that because when you're walking in the building, the chance of seeing that joint, even though we're going to take time to scribe that joint in that corner, the crack that will develop maybe over time if there's a movement in the wood will be one that you have to go to the back wall and look over at the side wall, versus when you come in the building, if we ran it the other way, you might be able to see that crack. So we always like to run the back wall first and then die the sides into that. We've also got Zach back here. He's working on wrapping up that vapor barrier and framing so that when we get to that, we're ready to go. The other thing, if you remember, the laser. So we got the green Stabilo laser here, and that's basically gonna shoot us our perfectly straight line so that this first sheet is gonna stand plumb. And we've already shot this base trim on with a laser. So if we can keep the start perfect, it should help us run all the way down perfect. And if you're not, then you get a jag at the bottom, so your sheets start tilting. And then right there at that trim line, it'll look like garbage. So sometimes the material sucks and you don't have any way around it. But if it gets too bad, we do have the track saw so we can clean them up. We got some lumber from Brazil, so if you're from Brazil and you're watching this, that shout out's for you. Throw up in the comments that you're from Brazil. I'd love to know how many Brazil peeps we got watching. How many, Greg? What's your guess?
27.
27? That's it?
That's it.
No, man, I bet you there is 500 people from Brazil that are gonna watch this video. So prove me right, Greg wrong. That would make my day. I'm joking. But yeah, plywood comes from everywhere, I guess. I didn't even know this was from Brazil. Zach, how many people are watching from Brazil?
I'm gonna guess 75.
Dude, he's your brother. There you go. That's way loud, probably. Now, if you come down real low, you can see where potentially there might be slight material differences. We found that this is not like cabinet grade plywood. It is sanded. Makes for a great shop wall. But if you look right here at this guy, we're probably like a 1/16 inch difference. And a couple different things could be going on there. If we look here, we got a joint of steel. See the difference? So we've got a lap of steel, so it makes this gap a little bit bigger. Well, as we go over, that's where our first gap is, and it's a little bit different. But once you continue, it looks pretty consistent. So now we've got to get this piece up, and the goal here is to make this joint look nice. And now you can probably see what I'm talking about. When someone comes in the building, they're gonna come back, and this gap that might show is gonna be, you're gonna have to come to this side and look at it, versus if you're walking in, it'll be somewhat hidden. Let's hope that's level, Greg. That looks pretty good. If you notice, I've got a slight tilt on my saw. because it doesn't tilt that way. It only rotates the other way, but I don't want to come from the short point. I want to come where there's some meat on the wood, and then I'll run it out. But I'm just putting a slight bevel. Safety glasses, and I still get sawdust in my eye. Okay. Does that look better? Man, that looks... I probably could get a little tighter at the top, maybe? That's pretty good, ain't it?
Just a hair tight at the top, maybe.
Good. Let me see. Get the laser probably. Okay. Now what we're going to do. I don't go there. We're going to let that come out a little. That where we like it. We're going to nail this edge off. That gets it nice and tight. You're not going to show that off to you? Our goal is to get it as tight as possible because we know there could be some shrinkage. It's a pretty humid day today, so there could be a little bit of moisture in the plywood. Dang it, I just misfired this one. I slipped right off the edge of the plywood. Little ring shanks. I don't think I remember exactly how long this plywood took, but seriously, if you take the time to put good base trim on and you take the time to level plumb up the first sheet, it goes so quick. It's really just about as fast as you can move them and as fast as you can nail them, but that does come with some consequences. Wow, so if you want to get a good workout, you put 3/4 plywood up in your shop. Pretty sure the guy that invented CrossFit probably just wanted to do construction and couldn't, so he was trying to find something that would give you that real world workout without having to go to the gym, but then they go to the gym anyway, so I don't know what I'm saying. Pretty delirious, all this. It's very hot out today, and this plywood is heavy. But one thing I wanted to say was, when you're doing this sort of stuff and you're running plywood, it is always good to consider your layout. So we always try to be consistent on how we lay our plywood. What I mean by that is, everybody knows when we start running the plywood that the bottom of the pile, let's say facing the south, that's always going to be on the bottom when it comes to the wall. And we want to keep the sheets in order, because the way I figure it, it comes off the line at the plant in the order that it was cut. And I want it to try to go together as seamless as possible. So, you know, through experience over time, I've realized that you gotta try to do that. Otherwise, you end up with gaps, inconsistencies. It just doesn't seem to go together nearly as well as if you stay consistent on how you run the plywood. So, long story short, be consistent. That's key. I just wanted to break. That's the only reason I did that little tip. Sometimes it's just nice to also to go ahead and run a bunch of sheets and just get that hard work out of the way, then come back and start nailing them. Talk about instant gratification. This stuff goes up quick. So when we're shooting on this trim here, this double angle trim, I'm just using a cordless 18 gauge crown stapler. So DeWalt makes a pretty decent one. Sometimes it won't make it all the way through the material, but for the most part, no problem. You can see down there, there's one that barely went through. Usually no problem. Now what we're doing here on this trim is, let's see, you can see here we got a joint. What I did was I notched out the back. That way this guy would slide over top. And I'm always thinking about where the customer or anybody that comes in is gonna be, and they're gonna be looking at it. So I'm on the lap side. If I come over here, you barely see it. So this is the main direction that people are going to look. So I always come out of the far back corner and work my way out of it. Also, all I'm doing is stapling this up at this, wherever there's a plywood joint. So whenever I see a plywood joint, that's where I am stapling it, because this is where the inconsistency is in the panels. We're not gonna snap this line. We already set the base trim off the laser, so there could be a little bit of something every once in a while in the plywood. And by just snapping or just nailing, or stapling I should say, on the joints, if there's any sort of inconsistency in the sheet, we're just kind of connecting all the dots and it'll be perfect for our steel, I promise. Got all that ran. What we'll do is we'll run the back steel first. That way we can line up our wall ribs with our ceiling ribs, and then we will come out of the back that way. See the inconsistency in the plywood? This is what I was talking about. We can't really help this. I don't know why the plywood is not perfect all around, but that's why when we're installing this, what I make sure I do is I only fasten it here. See, there's a little bit of slop here, but the hope is that through the majority of the wall, as long as I only hit it here, it kind of all evens out. Now, obviously, I always talk about being perfect. There's parts of the job that it doesn't make any sense to worry about. This is one of those. This line is gonna look crisp and straight. Our steel's gonna run nice. We spent time down at the bottom where people are gonna see it. Not that we're trying to hide imperfections, but I'm not gonna run plywood all through a table saw to rip them all true to like perfect, right? So we're kind of dealing with our materials, doing what we can, and spending our time wisely wherever people are gonna definitely see it, and then doing our best everywhere else. Whenever we're doing any flat stock stuff, so especially around our overhead doors, I always have our supplier send us out coil stock. So this is the same steel that is used to make our wall panels, and the only difference is it hasn't ran through the machine. So this is what gets shrunk down when all the ribs get turned in and it goes through the roll former. This will turn into a panel of steel, but for us, I like to just match it, so that way our liner panel steel and our flashings that go around all of our doors, that all matches. So another great use of this Stabila laser, I'm finding uses all over the place, is shooting this jam trim, this J channel up. It just made quick work of these trims, and I didn't have to snap a line, which always adds a little bit of chalk dust that you got to clean up. So there you can definitely see that's a lot of flat stock. It's almost impossible to get rid of oil can, and we try to stretch as much as we can. I'm definitely in the back corner where it probably looks the worst. If I were to move over on this side, it would probably get much better. There really is something satisfying to me when you got this nice clean base trim, you've got nice tight joints on your plywood, and everything just looks good. It's like, why would you not just try to do a little bit extra to make it look right? Am I crazy? So now that we've got the plywood up, it's off to the races, and we're installing steel. Another, in my opinion, instant gratification type job. I mean, we literally don't have to do a whole lot because all the work's already been done. We're lining up the ribs on the ceiling to the panels on the wall, so we don't even have to lay it out. All we have to do is check plumb once in a while and make sure that our ribs are lining up, and it's that easy. We've already pre-punched these panels all on the ground there on that stack of steel you see, and I try to stay ahead doing some trims. Greg's throwing the sheets up, Zach's hauling them around, and we're just kind of like a well-oiled machine. We all kind of know the process. We've done it enough now, and it just goes really quickly, and quality. So that to me is efficiency. Quality and speed, efficiency. It runs at 2,500 RPM. This is not a drywall screw gun. It looks like a drywall screw gun. It works like a drywall screw gun, but the RPM is not the same. Or if you use a drywall gun, it will actually burn the screw instead of, you know, eat it at the right RPM. We've got a feature here that when on, you can pull the trigger and nothing until you go to put pressure on the screw. You've also got a lock-on button, so you don't even have to hold the trigger. It's on. This, my friends, is the honest to goodness truth. That's the only problem I have with this gun. Make sure you turn it off. The bit does come out occasionally. I've found that depending on the bit that I put in there, this is a very cheap bit. I took the Makita bit out because it comes with a 5/16 bit. These are 1/4-inch hex head screws, so I put one of the cheap quarters that I had. I really probably should look at getting a different bit because occasionally it comes out. Usually that's not an issue. You just kind of give it a little bit of a twist when it turns, and that kind of just pulls it out of the screw without losing the bit. So if you kind of just go in, and then as you leave, just kind of move it. So this is adjustable. Here you just turn this and it adjusts the depth. Basically what happens is, as this gets pushed flush, when your fastener bottoms out, it turns the drill off. So it's like a clutch driver, just like a drywall screw gun. Does a perfect job putting these in. Once you set it, it pushes the washer just about perfect. So you get a nice consistent depth of drive every time. Okay, I know I have talked a lot about that Makita screw gun. I genuinely believe that it allows somebody with inexperience to put steel on and it look good, because I tell you what, if you overdrive or underdrive screws on your steel, it shows. I see it. Maybe the average person won't. But in my opinion, like when things are wrong and people don't know exactly what's wrong, but they do subconsciously notice that something doesn't look right. And it's just one of those things that I think makes a huge difference, is properly set screws every time. Not a bad day This morning there was no wall finishes. We still got some screws to install. Over here you can see where it doesn't look flat. It's bubbled out just a little bit because of the tension on the steel or the tensile strength. You can see how that overhead door is. All that flat stock will give a nice place to install all the tracks, the springs, the opener, and there won't be any ribs in the way. Be nice if I could get that in one actual sheet, but there's a few sheets there. So there's a couple seams, but it looks pretty good, I think. So tomorrow we'll get this front wrapped up. We got to get those door headers trimmed out. Those are some big doors. And then we can kind of come around the corners and tie that in. It's always amazing how quickly the interior goes. You know, you're not leveling things, you're not plumbing things, you're basically just running. And you know, you've already done all that work in the beginning to make sure that things were plumb and square and level and all that good stuff. So if you do that, it sure makes running interior quite easy and quite satisfactory. So the one thing we also have to do is we've got some exterior finishes to do. I'm waiting on some trim pieces. But we've also got this office that we got to do something with. So this 20 by 20 office, we've got to insulate it and then frame it out, put a ceiling in it, and then we're going to run the 3/4 plywood on this also. Customer's probably going to paint it. Some people do drywall, but this one's going to be plywood. It'll be nice. It's a big office, 20 by 20. I think there's going to be bathroom stuff here. So definitely I'll bring you guys back when that's all done. That's not in my contract like normal, but crazy. It's looking good. Time to get out of here though. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for hanging out. Hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you back maybe on the next episode. So hit that subscribe button. I appreciate it.